Hey, Carlos. Hey, Lori.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How about you today?
Pretty good.
Good. Good. I am coming
Sorry,
to,
hi, I'm slow at getting it, getting it attached.
yeah, I understand. I'm slow at it too, Lori. I am sequestered in my office, but I'll tell about that in a bit.
Yeah, I see that. Everything okay, I hope?
My wife's got some symptoms,
Oh, no.
so out of an abundance of caution, here I am. I just don't want to run the risk, you know.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's gotta do what you gotta do. So
Well,
today's
I
was gonna
hope it
be
works out.
if it had to be today, if it had to be any day, today's a good day. So
Oh, I see Sarah joining us. Hang on, we're not FaceTimed yet.
hey, Ciara.
Hang on, we're not FaceTimed yet. She can't see me.
I see the top of her head.
Yeah. Oh, golly. But, all right. Okay, we're good. We're connected. You can talk to her now.
Hey, Ciara. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes.
Dr. Manley, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So if our group needs help with the with GLO-BUS, will it be through Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, at this point, I'm kind of taking a step back. You know, this is the last year, and I don't want to get too heavily involved in helping with decisions this year. But yeah, I'll certainly be happy to do a quick Zoom or answer an email or a text message question.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I think Amanda's going up to the classroom to start the feed. I hope she is. Let me look at my email. Let's see anything about it. Hey, Ashley. Hey, Shannon. Ashley, you're not quarantined anymore. What are you doing on here?
Hi, Dr. Manley. Sorry, we're just now getting it in.
That's okay. I just texted you. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to go up to Dillard.
No, it's okay. You can do it from there. It's perfectly fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally misread that email.
Well, no, I'm doing Zoom for both of my classes today. So yeah, it's okay.
Do I want the light on or off up here? Off.
Can y'all hear me in the classroom?
That's better. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. The projector's still warming up.
Okay. We'll give it just a minute.
Y'all, this is a quick survey for Dillard College. It's called it's just to see if you've gotten a job. going to grad school, and you may have answered similar questions for another department like the career center. Dr. Manley does a great job capturing that. But it really helps us improve. So thank you so much. You bet. Oh. Thank you. Should only take like 5 minutes. Okay, we can see your screen, Dr. Manley.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, y'all. I wasn't planning on seeing you via Zoom today, but it's funny how that things work out. My wife is exhibiting some suspicious symptoms. She's running a fever, has a headache, and is really fatigued, and that's unusual for her. So we decided that in the interest of safety, it would probably be best for me not to spend the next hour and 20 minutes barking at you about the presentation. So instead, you're going to get a virtual presentation. And afterwards, if I've done this correctly, I'll be able to upload the video so that you can go back and take a look at it a little later. So of course, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. I'd like to say thank you to the 24 students out of roughly 60 that have completed the Dillard College exit survey. I really do appreciate you doing that. I would like to get, about a 90% response rate. So we're almost halfway there. If you could just take 5 minutes or so to answer that exit survey. And I promised you on Monday that you were fixing to be surveyed 40 ways from Sunday. So you've got survey number 2 from Amanda and the student opinion of instruction. The course evaluation is available online as well. So I'd ask you to do all of those things and just pay attention to your email as it comes. Also remember that today is decision day, due by 11 o'clock tonight. In addition to decision day, you have GLO-BUS quiz 2, which is due by 11 o'clock tonight. Remember, for GLO-BUS quiz 2, you can take that as a team if you'd like. So at any rate, I'm going to jump right in and talk about your presentation and give you some, I really should have this as don'ts and do's, because there's a lot more don'ts than there are do's in the presentation. But I just want to kind of have a conversation about what a professional presentation should look like, what I expect, and how things are going to go. So the format that you see on your screen today is pretty much the way that it's going to go. When you're doing your presentation on December the 2nd or November the 30th, I will be remote. You guys will be remote. We will not be in the same room. In fact, it's highly likely that your team won't even be in the same room. So we'll have multiple presenters that day. The presentations will occur during our regularly scheduled class period. So you'll have to log on at 12:30 to do your presentation. And we'll go in a specific order that I'll give you after the simulation is done. So at any rate, don't miss any deadlines. Don't want you to do that. Also, please remember that the course evaluation, or excuse me, the peer evaluations and the self-evaluations are available. The major field test practice quiz is open in D2L, and the major field test is coming up on Monday, and you need to allocate at least 2 hours to take that. So I think that's all the housekeeping stuff. Any questions about any of that stuff? Amanda, can I ask you to do something for me, please?
Of course.
So on Monday, normally Dr. Lowe has a lecture in Dillard 324 at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And of course, that's virtual. I had asked Giselle, his graduate assistant, if he was going to be there this coming Monday, if he was planning on having a lecture, and she said not, but she was going to check and make sure and get back with me. So
Find out.
I don't want to have a room conflict on Monday when I've got students with the MFT and then students expecting to come in and hear a lecture. If you can please check that for me.
I will.
All righty, thank you so much. So the rest of you heard that. There will be no problem or no classroom conflicts or anything. So let's get into the presentation, don'ts and do's. So first and foremost, I got to get my clicker working here. I'm sure y'all heard the raptured applause there. Please don't have any hokey transitions on your slides. We don't need sound effects. There's a lot of don'ts on this slide, okay? First and foremost, don't have those hokey sound effects. Nobody needs to give you a round of applause. The second thing that I would say is don't even tell me where you finished in the game. This information is taken directly from the Camera and Drone Journal. I'll have that information in front of me. And aside from that, I know where you finished by virtue of the presenting order. So I don't need to know that you finished in first place. And I just want to add a little context at this point. Hopefully I'll reinforce this for you. It's not a game, it's not a simulation. It will really help if you can kind of just envision yourself as the top management team of your company and you're making a pitch to keep your job. So that's the context. So eliminate the term game or simulation from your vocabulary before you even go in there. So no need to tell me where you finished, okay? This slide potentially could convey a lot of information, but there are some problems with it. First and foremost, you guys took over running the company at the end of year 5. Therefore, I'd like to know what the conditions were when you took over the company. So when I have a graph like this, I need to know what the year 5 conditions were. If you'll note, this particular graph starts at year 6. You need to start at year 5. In addition, there's a lot of information that's being conveyed in this slide that maybe or maybe not is relevant, okay? So you've got the PQ rating overlaid on the bar or on the line chart, okay? I don't really know that that's terribly helpful information. And by the way, don't let the term entry level confuse you, because in the previous simulation that we ran, they changed a couple of years ago. In the previous simulation, it had entry level and professional multi-featured digital cameras. Entry level is the equivalent of your action capture camera. The multi-featured is the equivalent of your drone. So don't let those terms confuse you. But at any rate, first and foremost, please start your charts or your graphs at year 5 and run them through the last year of the simulation, okay? Don't try to convey too much information on a chart. And also remember bandwidth, particularly in this era when we're doing lots of stuff via Zoom. You see there's an image watermarking that slide, and that could make your presentation difficult to render across the internet. Don't want that to happen to you. So simpler is better, in my opinion, on the slides, okay? Another problem with this slide is there is no referent point. All I know is that this particular company, Awesome Sauce's price went up for 2 years and then it went down for a bunch of years. I have absolutely no idea what the competitors did. I have no idea what the industry did. All I can do is take a look at it and see at the end of their tenure, cameras were selling for $120 each. At the beginning of their tenure, cameras were selling for $210 each. So it really raises more questions than it gives me answers. So I'd encourage you to be careful about what you're trying to convey on each slide. This particular slide, again, you've got the year 6 to year 14 problem in that they're starting with year 6. So here's the problem with starting with year 6 on a slide like this. what you see in year 6 looks pretty lousy, particularly with regard to the entry-level camera. Their market share was only 6.675%. Compare that to year 14, and it's 19.7%. But what's missing is the fact that when they started back in year 5, they had 12 point something percent market share, whatever 1/8 of the market is. 12.33% market share. So in year 5, they had 12.3. In year 6, that market share dropped to 6.675%. That gives me pause. It makes me wonder what the heck's going on. In addition, you got 4 pie charts, 4 exploded pies on the screen, and that's just way too much information. So I would encourage you to have the KISS rule. Just keep it simple. Keep your story very straightforward. And if you have a visual like this, just be careful not to get caught up in the numbers on a slide like this, because if you get in the numbers and you have somebody presenting who doesn't know the numbers in and out, you can really have a problem, because they'll get off in the ditch and in the weeds, and time is ticking, and you only have 10 minutes for the presentation. The next slide, it's actually a pretty decent slide in that it's laid out fairly well. I like the fact that we have very few words for our bullet points. What would be better would be if we had an early slide in the presentation that says what failed, and then we had a later slide in the presentation that says what worked and how we're going to apply those things that worked going into the future. And I'd even caution you against using negative words like failed. If you wanted to, you could actually take this back to chapter 2 and chapter 3, where you're talking about strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. So if we look at opportunities, right, that's a much better word than failure. So be careful about your phrasing, and be careful about your messaging, and also be careful about the placement of the information in your presentation. You don't want to leave somebody with a negative takeaway from your presentation. So even the ordering of these 2 columns on this slide where it says what worked and what failed, if you have to have it on one slide, I would say what failed and what worked. And I know that's a kind of a nuanced point. Also, I would caution you at this stage about having spurious capitalization. And by spurious, I mean what appears to be sort of random capitalization. I don't care what you practice. If you want to capitalize every word, that's perfectly fine. But if you'll take a look at the screen, you'll see that the word worked and failed are the only 2 words on the screen that aren't capitalized. So it looks sort of random. Okay, so whatever you choose, if you want to capitalize every word on the screen, do that, but don't have some capitalized and some not capitalized. On this slide, you've got lessons learned. I think that's a much better phraseology than failures. Okay, so you can talk about the application of those, but again, when we say lessons, we're also making it sound a little bit like a classroom experience. And I know that this was a classroom experience, and I know that it was a learning experience for you, but I want you to think like a business person. I want you to think about how you can phrase this to be the type of presentation that you would make in a professional setting to a board of directors. So just pick your words carefully. Also, if you'll notice, the word proactive is capitalized, and it's the only word that doesn't start a bullet that is capitalized. So it just kind of seems a little bit spurious. Frankly, it's just sloppy. That's, I guess, the bigger issue. Make sure that you use correct terminology. For example, on this slide, you see the term best cost strategy. That's not a strategy that we ever talked about in class. That is phraseology that comes from the GLO-BUS simulation itself. But the actual term that should be used is either cost leadership, integrated cost leadership, integrated differentiation, or differentiation, or best value if you want to refer to the two integrated strategies as best value. Make sure that you use the correct terminology that we've talked about all semester long, and make sure that you understand what the definition of those strategies is. A best cost strategy, even if it existed, even if we had talked about it, would not be to provide a high-end camera at a competitive price. That's not a definition of a strategy. And further, it makes me question whether this particular team even understands the difference between cost and price. See, they say best cost strategy, provide a high-end camera at a competitive price. It sort of sounds like in the definition that they're doing an integrated differentiation strategy. But if you're doing integrated differentiation, the term cost really doesn't come into play when you're talking about implementing the strategy, okay? So just be careful about your definitions. That's something that'll bite you, and it's embarrassing, and it doesn't look good, okay? This particular slide shows a tremendous amount of information. There's 4 lines on both of the graphs. It's just too much stuff to try to figure out what's going on. In addition, if you take a look at it, there's no labeling on the axes. I don't know if the numbers on the left side represent the price and the numbers on the right side represent the PQ rating, and the numbers across the bottom represent the years. I know that because I've seen the presentation. But remember your audience when you're making a presentation. They may not be familiar with the shortcuts that you have. Also, I'd call your attention to down at the very bottom of the screen. The IA is industry average. That's going to be the light blue line. The word price is not capitalized. And then when you see BFCA, the word price is capitalized. When you see BFCA quality, it's capitalized, but when you see IA, it's not capitalized. So why the difference in the capitalization there? Quite frankly, when you've got a slide like this that has so much information on it, you're going to take a really long time to explain this slide if you put one in your presentation like this. And the longer it remains on the screen, the more time your audience has to pick it apart and to wonder what the heck you're saying, okay? So you don't want to have that. If you want to convey something, use a graph or use a picture or use a chart that conveys exactly what you want to say. And you don't want to have to try to explain that graph. That graph needs to tell a story by itself. The words that you're using say why the stuff on the graph is appropriate or why the stuff on the graph is true. This particular slide is just hard down lazy. Now, first of all, I said, don't tell me where you finish in the simulation, okay? Don't use the term game. And if anything that you take away from this sticks with you, don't screenshot from the GLO-BUS camera and draw journal. You can see where they just used the Windows snipping tool. All that they did was they took the snipping tool and they cut a rectangle out and pasted it in their PowerPoint presentation. Quite frankly, it just doesn't look good, and it's irrelevant anyway. I don't think that it tells us any information that is going to help to tell your story, okay? This is a good slide in that it gives me the organizational structure for the company. It tells me the roles that each of the team members played. But I would encourage you to use language that's consistent. So just think about the video that we watched regarding Steve Jobs on Monday and how Adam Lashinsky said that when Jobs came back to Apple, he eliminated the general manager. He didn't want people running the business. He didn't want the term manager to be used. Look at the inequality in the titles here. You've got the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer, and the chief financial officer. But then you've got a product design manager and a marketing management. You see the inconsistency in the titles. Yeah, I don't think we have any teams. I don't know that we have any teams left with 5 members on the team, but figure out how you can make those titles equivalent with one another. If you guys are the C-level executives, so whatever your role is needs to be consistent with that. You don't have a hierarchy within the team other than a chief executive with whom the buck stops, okay? This slide does not give me the vision of the company. It has the questions that you might ask as you're trying to develop a vision and a mission, but it doesn't tell me at all what the vision for the company is. Also, you've got spurious capitalization here. You'll see the word vision up top capitalized, the word quality capitalized, and strategy capitalized. So be careful about what you put on your slides. It is perfectly appropriate to have a slide that has your mission and vision and values, or even to have a slide for vision and mission separate, and then link those slides to your strategy. Whatever your strategy is, it needs to be consistent. Think about how I would walk up into the room, like basic building blocks. Step 1 is your strategy has to be intentional. Basic building block number 2, your strategy has to be consistent. Basic building block number 3, your strategy has to be logical. Okay, so that's how I want you to lay out your presentation. Tell me what your company's story is. This is a bad deal for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, if you only show me 3 years out of the 8 years or 9 years or however many years we have that you guys make decisions, if you only show me 3 years, I'm real suspicious about what happened in years 6, 7, 8, and 9, and years 13 and 14. I don't see that information there, okay? It's really confusing. In addition, I don't have any idea how the number of stores or retail shops that your company has compares to the industry. We do know that the number of retail shops and the number of chain stores and the number of local camera stores, you know, big box chain or big box online and local stores is important because that helps you with your sales. But if I don't have a reference point, I have nothing to compare this to. So I don't know whether or not having 100 and something online stores in year 12 is a good thing or a bad thing. So make sure you give me something to compare to. If you choose to put financial information on your slides, do so sparingly. I would discourage you from putting an income statement or a balance sheet up because you can get lost in the numbers really, really quickly. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a bar chart for your balance sheet, but if you were going to do a bar chart, you would need to do a stacked bar chart rather than a 4-bar chart, okay? So understand what I'm saying here, okay? A stacked bar chart is one where the height of the bar is your total assets, and then you have liabilities and equity within the bar, okay? So you have 1 bar for each year, but they're stacked. Liabilities, equity, and assets are stacked together to tell you the total size of the company. And really, you know, if you know the fundamental accounting equation, assets equals liabilities plus equities. So really you need only liabilities and equities. And if we're only trying to convey those 2 pieces of information, do we even need a bar chart? So think about your messaging, think about what you're doing, okay? So this is not necessarily bad information because it does show that the amount of assets the company has grew over time. but I don't really know anything from those other bars. It's just a tremendous amount of information. It's like they were trying to use every color in the rainbow. Future strategy. I don't know what you mean by maintain leader position in the industry. I don't know whether you're talking about the cost leader or the market leader. So you need to be more specific. You know, if you want to maintain your status as the market leader, you need to say that, but be very specific with your language, okay? Pay more dividends. If you want to increase your dividend strategy, you need to tell me why you increase your dividend. If you want to try to get your stock price up, tell me why that's important. Invest in our employees, sustainability. Those all sound like good buzzwords that we would think about because we're taking kind of a balanced approach there, right? When we are maintaining the leader position in the industry, we've got a market orientation. When we pay more dividends, we've got a shareholder orientation. When we've got investment in our employees, we have an employee orientation. And when we talk about sustainability, we've got that corporate social responsibility. So that all sounds good, but if you're going to put it up there, be prepared to talk about it and tell me what it really does mean. Again, you see another slide that just reiterates, you know, the standing in the simulation. Don't do it. I mean, just don't do it. And also, if you do put something up there, don't cut off the bottom of it, right? You need to show all of the companies. I'm not saying that you should do that, but definitely show all of the competitors if you were to do something like that, okay? Also, I think you guys need to take note that every company in this industry has a name for the business, and we still have a lot of companies in the industry that do not have names. You remember we talked about that early on. You have the ability to go in and change your name. And think about it as a branding issue. What does it say about your company? How does it relate to your mission and your vision and your values and your strategy and your results? So I think you need to really be intentional. And if you come in there with a company name of F company, then that's probably not a good thing, okay? This particular slide gives too much information. You know, we've got some redundancy and it's just kind of poorly executed. I don't know how this ties into the company's strategy. So let me just take maybe a couple of things here, okay? On the left-hand side, you've got dollars. Notice how the dollar sign is obscuring the 340 on the chart that's on the right-hand side. Yeah, that's not a good thing. They've got a year 5, but there's no data for year 5. That's not a good thing. And also think about, what are we trying to say? If it's cost per unit, is there a better way to convey that information? And it may be that you were concerned about cost per unit on your action capture camera, maybe not on the UAV drone, right? Because if I'm looking at this as an attendee to your presentation, I really want to know what happened to drive your production costs on that multi-featured camera so high in year 10, and why at the end of year 13 are you still the highest production cost per unit? Just be careful what you put up there, okay? Again, you've got another kind of frankly, just a lazy slide. That Gold Star Award really doesn't mean a whole lot other than you're the best at giving away my money. And I represent your shareholders as a member of the board of directors. So if you're going to tell me that you won the Gold Star Award for corporate citizenship, I need to know that that's part of your strategy. And let me give you a tip. If you're running a cost leadership or integrated cost leadership strategy, you shouldn't be in the running for the Gold Star Award. It's only those companies that need to invest in corporate citizenship to help get their image rating up that really should be among the leaders in corporate social responsibility expenditures. So again, don't be lazy and tie everything back to the strategy, okay? This is actually a good slide. Don't worry too much about the numbers, and the numbers look abysmal compared to your performance, but understand we were operating with a different simulation at that time. I do like to see where you started and where you wound up. So if you show me your results from year 5 and you show me your results from year 13, that's good information, okay? I want to see the change. I want to see how much you've increased the stock price. If you have, if you have a 4,000% increase in stock price by taking the stock from $12 per share to $500 per share, that's something that's going to get my attention. So you might want to put the delta in there. How much did you change? Okay. You also might want to talk about the important performance metrics, just where you really shine. If you do a slide like this, be careful that you make your columns align. What you can pretty clearly see here is that they center aligned underneath the year header, and it just looks a little ragged, a little bit sloppy. But it's good information, okay? It's good information to show me how you've been a good steward of my money that was invested into the company. This slide has way too many words. If I'm reading the slide, I'm not making eye contact with you. And again, I'm probably picking stuff apart, like I'd like to meet Mr. Green initiatives and Miss Energy efficiency programs. You see what I'm saying? Why are those terms capitalized? Are they proper names? They're not, right? A green initiative is just corporate social responsibility. Energy efficiency, that's another type of corporate social responsibility. You didn't capitalize contributing to charity, so why did you capitalize those things, okay? Don't put so many words on your bullet points. This slide, when it's up on the projector, is going to look really, really plain. And, the slides should be to guide you. They're a cheat sheet for you as you're talking. That's all they're for. If I'm engaged with the slides, I'm disengaged with you. So I need to connect with whoever is presenting, not connect with the PowerPoint slide. I would challenge any finance major in the course to try to interpret what we're talking about here within a 10-minute presentation. I can't do it. I'm sure that Dr. Forrester could spout out something that would sound good, but the reality is this slide doesn't mean anything to anyone. We didn't talk about sensitivity analysis and intrinsic value. We didn't talk about differences in the constant growth rate. We did talk about weighted average cost of capital, and I told you how to calculate it. Weight times rate plus weight times rate plus weight times rate. However, it has no place whatsoever in the presentation. It's not one of your key performance indicators. It's not something that you were evaluated on. And quite frankly, at the risk of sounding a little bit rude when I say this, you put something up there, it's kind of like you're trying to baffle me with BS. I know that's probably a little bit harsh, but it's not important. When you're creating your PowerPoint presentation, here's what I'll do. I'll challenge you to find your story, whatever the story is for your company. If you can't figure it out, let me help you. We'll craft a story for your company, and your PowerPoint presentation should help you to tell your story. Therefore, every single slide that goes into the presentation needs to earn its way in there as a part of your story. If it's not part of your story, it does not belong. So just think about that. Here's some do's and I'll have some don'ts, okay? So we talked about the story, figure out what it is. If you don't know what the story is, send me a text message. We'll jump on a Zoom call. We'll look at the camera and drone journal, and we'll figure out your story. I want you to introduce your teammates. Remember the slide that had the names and the roles? That's a very good slide. It's also important to give me a little background information about your company. So share with me what your mission, vision, and values were, and share with me what your strategy was. And if your strategy evolved over time, which I know that it did, share with me how your strategy changed over time, okay? Remember the context. It's not a game. It's not a simulation. For the most part, the simulation for the last 2 months or so has been life for you. So treat it as such. You're making an appeal to keep your job, and I want you to look the part. I want you to dress for the job that you're trying to get. Okay, so be professional. Gentlemen, that means ties and coats. Ladies, that means appropriate work attire. I know that we're not going to be in the same room, but hygiene counts, and the way that you dress counts. Review the rubrics, which I'm going to share with you, and they're already uploaded into D2L. Engage with the presenters. Call people by name. When you're looking at people on a Zoom, sometimes it just helps to reel folks back in, to call them by name if you feel like they're drifting. Respect your fellow presenters. Respect the people that are in the presentation. You need to talk to them, not at them, and you would never want to talk over them. So if you haven't figured it out, doing a Zoom presentation where you've got two-way communication is a little bit different than where I park and bark and just give you the information and kind of spout it out. You need to give people time to get their question out. And for other people on the presentation or other people in the room, sometimes you have to repeat that question or repeat the piece of information that came out. So just remember that. Some don'ts. Don't use the term game. Don't use the term recession. Don't play the blame game. Don't talk about somebody giving you bad advice. Don't talk about how people did wrong things. You need to own whatever your performance is. So the word recession doesn't have a place in the simulation because we did not have a recession. Revenues grew every year. What happened in year 10, 11, 12, 13 is growth slowed. It was not quite as fast as it had been in previous years, but we still had an expanding market. We would still consider where we are on the product life cycle. It is still in the growth phase, right? Remember, as the life cycle goes up, we haven't reached maturity. We're simply more mature than we were. Now, I won't know if you're using note cards. If you do it well, I won't know, but you'll know. Note cards are something that you can hide behind, and they have zero place in a professional presentation. Think back to when you took foundations 4 years ago. They started coaching you at that point not to use note cards in your presentation, okay? Don't use the GLO-BUS charts or graphs. Go in there, dig into the information, get the information that you need to tell your story, and build your own charts and graphs. Those GLO-BUS things, they're generic and they will not tell your story. Remember your time limit. On the rubric, rubric number 2, our students will be effective oral communicators. One of the things is, did you stay within the time limit? So I'm evaluating whether you're plus or minus 1 minute from the 10-minute time limit. Don't fail to get your story out. Don't talk to the slides, talk to the people. I know that's a little bit different, but you need to engage the camera. Think about what it's like when you're listening to a presenter and I'm not paying attention to what's going on the camera. I'm looking directly into the camera when I'm talking to you, but you see what happens if I engage with something that's on another screen over here. Okay, so just be cognizant of where your eyes are. And if you try to use note cards, sometimes that can really mess you up. Okay, don't talk over one another. Don't make factual misstatements. Things like putting up best cost strategy and then saying that you're producing a high quality camera at below average cost, or below average price rather. yeah, that's not good, okay? Don't make those misstatements. Don't talk to me about the world rankings. Those don't matter, okay? If you're the market leader, tell me that you're the market leader. If you're the cost leader, tell me that you're the cost leader. If you are the differentiated provider, tell me that you're the differentiated provider. If you have the highest earnings per share in the industry, tell me that you have the highest earnings per share. If you have the best stock price, tell me that you have the best stock price, okay? If you wanted to do PE ratio, that would be something appropriate for you to get into. That simply is the relationship between price and earnings, right? PE ratio, price earnings ratio. And if you wanted to compare that to the industry, then you can tell me that you're the best in the industry, but you're not going to talk about it in GLO-BUS, and you're not going to tell me that in year 12, you finished in number 12 in the world on return on equity. Yeah, that just doesn't work, okay? This is a simulation, it's a learning experience, but I want you to treat it like it's really, really real, okay? So the next couple of slides are the rubrics, and I'm going to actually stop sharing that screen, and I'm going to come in here and share the actual rubrics, okay? So first, you guys should see rubric number 1 on your screen. Does it say DCOBA undergraduate learning goal number 1? Okay. All right, so this rubric is whether or not you're effective at problem solving and decision making. Specifically, what I'm looking at here is, do you understand the context of strategy? Do you understand what strategic management is? Do you understand how to identify problems and then use your critical thinking skills to make decisions to help you solve those problems? Okay, that's what you're being evaluated on here. We use these rubrics. The reason they look like this and the reason you see the rubrics over and over and over again in the courses that you've taken here at Dillard are that these are standard rubrics that we use for our assurance of learning process. Okay, so I'm going to fill these rubrics in for you. There's one thing that you need to know, however. Your grade is independent of this rubric. And your grade is really going to be the only thing in the entire semester that's subjective. I will tell you this, I'm pretty lenient on grading. The average grade usually on a presentation is a B. It's usually like 80%. Okay, if you believe the myth, a C is an average grade. I'm usually pretty lenient. There'll be probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 A presentations, probably 2, maybe 3 B presentations, and there might be a C or a D presentation in there. That's going to be subjective and it's going to be independent of the rubric. And really what I'm evaluating you on in that context is how well you told your story, and do I truly believe that you got strategy? You've heard me say this several times in class. I don't care when you get strategy, so long as you get it before we're done. So really with the presentation, it's your opportunity to convince me that yes, you indeed got it. The second rubric that I will be filling out for you guys is rubric 2A. Our students will be effective communicators. So 2A is about oral communication. 2B is about written communication. So with this context, how well do you do speaking about the topic? Do you give me appropriate information? Do you stay within the time limit? Do you have smooth and polished transitions? Are your slides appropriate? Is your speaking volume, your pace, is all of that good? You know, truthfully, we could throw in another rubric if we wanted to. We could talk about the use of technology. Yeah, we're going to have hiccups with Zoom. That happens. You know, we'll get over it. That's not going to really affect your grade unless I take a look at your presentation and say, my God, you've never logged into Zoom in your life. At that point, it would be obvious that you hadn't practiced the presentation with your teammates, and that would affect your oral communication grade, correct? Okay, so just think about that, all right? So those are the rubrics. The rubrics are available in D2L. You can take a look at those, and I'll be filling those rubrics out remotely. So what I'll do for y'all is I will save this presentation. Let me get back to my screen here. I will save this presentation in YouTube, and I'll upload a link for it so that you guys can go back and review what I've talked about here. In addition, I will give you the actual PDF. Don't worry about that rubric number 3 there. Ignore it. I will not include it in there, okay? You'll see what the do's and the don'ts were. When you look at the PowerPoint slide, you'll remember what I talked about, and you'll see some best practices and some worst practices. But I'll upload that information for you. So just understanding what the rest of the semester is going to look like, my very sincere hope is I'm going to be with you on Monday, but it really depends on what my wife's COVID test says. If she tests positive, I'm quarantined and somebody else will be administering the MFT. If she tests negative, my plan is to be there with you on Monday. So after that, you guys won't be back. You won't be back on campus. I won't be back on campus after that either, because we're leaving to go to Georgia to be with family. So I'll be doing my job remotely while you guys are learning remotely, okay? If you need me, as always, text me, email me, call me. Understand there is a 1 hour time difference. So when it's 9 o'clock p.m. here, it's 10 o'clock p.m. in Georgia. But you know, the normal communication lines will apply. The only thing is you won't see me face to face unless we do a Zoom. So anybody have questions about the presentation or what I'm expecting or what the next couple of weeks look like for you? I don't have a big view of the screen. Ashley, you got something?
What is the time limit for it?
The time limit for the presentation?
Yeah.
The time limit for the presentation is 10 minutes. And I want your presentation to be plus or minus 1 minute. Okay. That's a good question. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see anybody on Zoom. I don't see any hands in the room, although it's a really small view that I have. Let me see. Make you guys large. Any questions there in the room? Okay, looks like there's not. All right, folks, I'm in the building. I'm downstairs in my office. So if you need to Zoom about your decision, yes, hey.
Oh, I was asking if we have to like stand or sit.
I can't hear you.
Do we have to stand or sit? Or like, is there a preference to stand or sit when we present?
Go up and talk to the mic on the thing, on the podium there. I'm sorry.
Hello.
Hey,
Which one? This one. I was wondering if there's a preference to stand or sit when we're presenting.
there's a preference for standing or sitting? No.
Okay.
Yeah, not really a preference. I would just say this, be consistent. I sit when I do a Zoom presentation because it'd be an awful long time to stand in one place. For you guys, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. I mean, you've got a 10-minute presentation, so it shouldn't kill you to stand. Y'all know that I wander when I present. That just doesn't work well on a Zoom. So yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Any other questions? Okay, well, good luck in your decisions. Make sure nobody finishes with less than 100 million in ending equity tonight, or that will automatically trigger year 14. Nobody wants to go to year 14, right? Yeah, we don't want to do that, okay? All right, you guys stay safe, be blessed, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the other side of whatever this quarantine or isolation looks like, okay? Take care.